Well, hello everyone. You have right here. I'll talk about understanding about weather right here. What exactly does that usually mean when we talk about understanding weather right here? I'm using this right here, this bird example right here, an example. But I'll probably tell everybody that sometime later on, I'll go ahead and see if I can maybe find any examples of any local radar, local radar weather forecast or something like that. But one of the reasons why I'm using this right here is because that when we first look outside, by the way, that looking at the weather right here, and the first thing, what is the very first thing that you actually see whenever you do look outside? Is it the sunrise, or maybe possible that you might see a bird or two flying in the sky or something like that? But still, that and I can probably tell you that, yeah, okay, well, so what type of bird do you think that this would be right here? I'm like, is it a bluebird or something like that? But, still, that people might even say, too, is toward, okay, yeah. If you would actually look at the weather, by the way, but, I'll tell everybody that the way that this weather was designed right here, but, everybody might say that the first thing that I would be thinking about, I would think it would be wind. The amount of wind, the sun and the wind, so if I were to be using this as an example right here of like a study about weather, I would probably say that, yeah, the understanding about wind. The study about wind right here. So what about wind? What about wind? Well, wind is basically, it's another way of how you want to cause as to where it, for where the wind, from where it comes from and where it's going. For where the wind blows, where the wind blows, from where it's coming from and where it's going. And people may want to know too as to where, I don't really know if those are two different things or not. But, on the other hand, that when we do talk about weather, the study about weather here, you always wonder as to where, okay, yeah, that, so from where it's coming from and from where it's going right here. So, in case of anybody's wondering toward it, yeah, that where does the wind come from? It comes from the sky. And whenever you were a kid, that you probably thought that yeah, it comes from the sky. So, really, in case of anybody's wondering, you know, uh, can you be a little bit more specific than that? And I know any teacher might even tell you too, is toward it. Does weather really come from the sky? Or like they say that no, if you actually did the actual science, that weather actually come, like for how you study about weather. Weather actually can also come from temperature and maybe about how I'm like, yeah, how the sky's moving on it. So back whenever you were a kid, that you may have thought is toward, yeah, well, what's the first thing that you think about whenever you study about weather? Well, like we all think about is that, yeah, you look up at the sky and that's what you see right there. But still, that in case of anybody's warns toward, okay, yeah, that so whenever you do think about weather, most of the time you think about the sky, right? You don't really think about the clouds of any kind. You don't really think about the flowers. You don't really think too much about the plants and the flowers of any kind. You don't really think about maybe sunrise and sunset or of any kind, or maybe if you also would think about is this toward it whenever thunderstorms are coming, and people might say is toward, okay, yeah, that would probably be one of my second thoughts is that whenever if I want to study weather for sure, that if there's a storm, there's a thunderstorm coming. Thunderstorms coming soon. Coming. There's a thunderstorm coming. So it sure seems that way that whenever we study weather, by the way, that you begin to worry toward, oh, okay, yeah, there's a storm coming. And so in case of anybody's worries toward, okay, yeah, so if you were to put that sideways right there and maybe paint a picture of a bird right there in your 102s to where it so yeah, that so by what direction do you think that maybe that you would see the bird flying? If the bird were to be flying, and in case if anybody's wondering, to where if anybody has thought about this, is to where it if you were to actually see any source of screensaver of something like from if you're going to be checking the weather reports, that you actually see this right here, this image right here, this bird right here, it will be flopping around, but people may say is this toward it, yeah. The bird is actually trying to give you a message saying it's toward that there's a storm coming. There's a storm coming, and be ready to know about what to read the weather reports or something like that. So I would actually, I use this picture right here as example right here of the weather right here, and like everybody might say that you see this background right here of this cloud right here. Maybe not everybody's really going to know that this right here is supposed to be an example right here of a cloud, and like you said, you got the sunshine peeking through the cloud right here, and maybe a few trees right here or something like that, but maybe not everybody's really going to know that right there is supposed to be maybe there's a storm coming. It's about maybe 3 miles. It's about 30 miles east. Heading this way or something like that. Maybe not everybody's really going to know exactly where it's going to be coming from until they actually see outside in the sky right there, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way. That every time you do think about that in your words toward it. Sometimes that you can't see these storms within a distance, and maybe that's another reason why that the local radar is very helpful. But on the other hand, that whenever you think about the bird right here, the bird's going to maybe say is this toward it, yeah, there's a storm coming right here, and so it's like whenever you think about that, and you see right this, toward it, yeah, you see that in small writing right here, and so it sure seems that way that ways that you can tell that there's a storm coming, but maybe a lot of people may say is this toward okay, yeah, one way you're able to tell is like, yeah, I look at the sky, I look up there at the sky, and like, yeah, well, I don't really pay too much attention, like, and well, if it's nice and sunny outside, but a lot of people might say is this toward it, yeah, weather is supposed to mean is toward, yeah, just look up at the sky. It don't look like it's doing anything outside right now, but if you actually look at it maybe in 5 hours from now, and more likely it's going to show something a little bit different, and so it's like people may want to know too is toward it. Why is it that it seems like toward it? There's a difference between walking outside and looking at what's going on from the outside, from the inside, and you begin to wonder toward, oh, okay, yeah. So it sure seems that way toward it. The first thing that you think about is that wind, the temperature wise, or maybe if it's raining or not, or something like that. But in case of anybody's worries toward it, why do you think that anybody would want to use a bird right here as an example of what do you think the weather is doing right here? And so if you actually look really closely at this right here and your word toward it, hey, that bird right there, and people may want to know too is toward it, yeah, that by what direction do you think that bird is coming from? And knowing that I'm like, oh yeah, it's flying. If it's supposed to fly north or south, or if it's coming from the east or something like that, and yeah, like a little peacock or something like that, But people may say is toward yeah, different types of feathers right there, but still that. So in case of anybody's wondering, to where yeah, if you would actually looked up in the encyclopedia, looking up in those weather books or something like that, this would be like maybe something that you would see like on the home page, like if you're trying to read a book or something like that, you would see like a little display right here of a bird right here, and they would say is toward it, yeah, could we keep reading right here, continue reading, and if you want to pick a subject toward it, yeah, if somebody were to ask you a question about what do you think that this is right here, what do you think it means right here, and so it sure seems that way that it's like a little quiz of some sort. If you study about weather right here, but people may want to know too is toward, okay, yeah, so this is the first thing that you might see right here. If you're opening up a book right here, you got this example right here, this bird right here, and maybe not everybody's really going to know the full story about, okay, what is this and what does it mean right there. But still, it's like it will be displayed right here, and like everybody might say that, yeah, it's displayed right here. So, like a little backdrop, right? And so if you start reading a book right here, and maybe if you set it for a home page right here, so whenever you saw it, that you were thinking as to where, okay, yeah, so you actually were using this right here, like do a painting of this, but then if you were to actually want to illustrate it, and then they would say that you would set it as like a backdrop right here to where it was displayed right here. So if you want to add like any titles right here on the left or something like that, but still, it's like you say is to where, yeah, you got the bird right here, but it's like people may say is to where, yeah, you set that for your backdrop right there for like a storybook or something like that, but people might say this toward if you were actually were to be reading any sorts of books studying about weather, though, that why do you think that you would want your display to look something like this right here? Yeah, you got a picture of a bird right here. If it's actually looking up or something like that, and if you were to actually look at an angle right here in like 102 is to where, okay, yeah, so whenever you were drawing this and designing this, it looked like just maybe a bird with just a few lines right here or something like that. You didn't really put in a whole lot of artistic detail right there. So people might say that if you were to actually set that for like maybe for a time display or something like that, the first thing that you're going to maybe see is maybe about this part right here of the display right here. So in case of anybody want to know too, that if you were to look at any images that you can set, for like maybe for a backdrop or for a display, like for your web browser or something like that, you would maybe use something, sort of kind of like this, to where it would display like an image right here of a bird right here. But it's like, yeah, that you would actually set that, but the first time that you use this web browser or something like that, or the search bar, you actually would like to set it to where, okay, yeah, this is how you want the home page to look at right here. And thinking is to where, okay, yeah, that, so what do you want to click on next? So it's like, so whenever you come up to a landing page right here, that you're thinking is toward, oh, okay, yeah, that, for sure. So if you come up to a landing page, and chances are you're going to go ahead and ask a question. You're going to go ahead and ask a question that's going to lead you to a landing page or something like that. It's like, yeah, what is the weather up to or something like that. So if you were to ask that question like on an AI chat and say that, yeah, what's the weather up to or something like that. But still, it's like people might say is this where you start out with a picture right here, and maybe if you're going to be doing any search on the search browser right there, and but still, it's like whenever you painted this picture right here, that you were thinking about just painting in it. You didn't really spend a whole lot of time making it really artistic, but I was just thinking too that I saw this and I thought go ahead and just use this as an example of the study about weather because maybe not everybody's really going to know what this is right here. Yeah, it's a green background right here with like a little white display right here of a sky right here, but really not everybody's really going to know what that means until you explain it a little bit more clearly. And people might say, yeah, this right here looks like a stick right here with leaves on it. Not everybody's going to know what that is. Not everybody's going to know what that is until they look closely at it, and they're going to say, oh, okay, whatever that's supposed to mean. But still, it looks like a stick right here, the bird landing on a stick. But people might say, unless if you zoomed in closely, you use this right here as an example of, yeah, there's a storm coming or something like that. And so really, so what is the weather doing? And so it's like everybody might say is to where you use this right here as like for your home display right here, and for what type of bird that is, and people might say, yeah, that looks like a bird landing on a stick right here. But some people might say is this to where, well, can it also be used as to where that there's a bird landing on a tree or something like that? But still, that a lot of designers might even say is this to where that it would be good if you can maybe put a little bit